I've got everything cleaned. I went ahead and cleaned this offline. Was no big deal. I used carburetor cleaner. I cleaned these surfaces with either a green Scotch pad, or I went ahead and used some 4-aught steel wool, and then I flushed everything. Then I used some compressed air to blow out all the passages. Everything looks really good. So let's get this thing put back together. Now, one of the things when I was taking this apart, I had looked at some of the new gaskets. So here's the old gasket, and I got that backwards. Okay, so here's the old gasket. What I did, they give you a couple different options, and let me grab this. When I had originally grabbed this, I looked at this gasket and said, "Oh, that's cut out. I'm going to have to research that." Well, there's actually another gasket in this kit that matches it exactly, so that's what we're going to use. Looking at all your mechanisms here on the side, you want to make sure you have those positioned right, or you're going to be taking this back apart. And I've looked at some pictures that I took, and I've got everything kind of in position. So basically, we're going to go ahead and get this put back together. I say I had everything figured out. Yep, that's how it went right there. Okay, now, obviously the key is to get everything lined up here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over and get some of these screws started. Get everything lined up down in here. We'll go ahead and get one of these started at least. I've got a fly that's just terrorizing my legs right now. You know, you gotta love life when that happens. So what are we doing here? There we go. Everything looks good there. Why are we not seating? Because we are not where we need to be. Okay, who said this was easy, right? Tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do it like that. Line up. There we go. Okay, that one started successfully. We'll go ahead and put another one in here. These are the two that are recessed, and they're flat tip screws, flat tip screws. Okay, got that one started. Now everything else should really line up. Go ahead and get everything started here. That lines up great. Now, you know, I told you I had an intermittent problem with this. Sometimes it was sluggish, sometimes it wasn't. It was almost like a vacuum leak, and I tested for vacuum leaks with starter fluid and all that kind of stuff. But when I took this apart, if you remember, I noticed that these screws were kind of, you know, loose. And they weren't rattling loose, but they were loose enough that there may have been an intermittent vacuum leak in the gasket between the throttle body and the main body. Okay, so I'm not gonna torque these to 65 foot-pound, but I'm gonna go ahead and feed it the onions here a little bit and make sure that these are indeed tight. Okay, there we go. And we've got our mechanisms in position so that when we put on the air horn, we'll be able to hook everything up. Okay, now we're going to start on the internals. Now we're going to work on the accelerator pump system, and the manual, the shop manual, showed you a neat little way to check this out. And what we're going to do is we're going to pour. It says to pour about a ½ inch of fuel in here, and we're going to put a little more in there. This is kind of unlevel. I'm sure it has to come up over where the jets go. Okay, we got that. That looks pretty good. And then the accelerator plunger, which is this right here, I actually soaked that. That's leather. This piece is leather. So I soaked that in some gasoline. So you put this in, and I found that if you kind of twist it a little bit, it kind of helps it go down in there. Now, remember we have 2 check balls. Your inlet check ball, which is down in this hole, and it's got that compression fitting in there. We decided not to change that. It looks in good order. And then the new, I have the old accelerator check ball, and I'm going to throw that over here as old, and I have the new one. Okay, looks like a BB to me, but this is the small one. In the manual, in the instructions showed you this is the small one, and then the other one is slightly larger. That's for the fuel inlet. This is the accelerator. So we're going to go ahead and place that in here. And what they say is you should be able to hold this ball down, go ahead and get the air out. That's magnetic. Get the air out of the system with this plunger. And this is the first time I've ever done this, so. And I'm thinking the fuel has to be in that inlet right there. But you hold this ball down and take this up and down. There it goes. And they say that no fuel, you shouldn't have any fuel coming through here. Now, if I take this out and I go ahead and pump this plunger, fuel will probably come out there, and it does. Okay, so that's how the manual tells you to check to make sure that this accelerator pump plunger is working, and it looks like it's working to me. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this off for a minute. I'm going to get this fuel out of here, then we'll come back and put all this together. There's actually one more test that we need to do. I took the fuel out of the bowl, and then I was reading the manual, and there's actually another check that we have to do here. So we have to take this Venturi assembly right here. Here's the old gasket. Here's the new gasket. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put that together. This concerned me a little bit when you see how that lines up. This lines up pretty good with these holes right here, but when it slides forward, it really doesn't. It kind of cuts it off. So I want to make sure that when I put this on, I've got these pushed back as far as they will go. So let's go ahead and do that. Get all of this in here. Get all of this in here. Okay, there we go. Then we've got the 2 screws. We'll get these in and get them tightened down. Got the new gasket, and you know what? Just to make myself feel really good, so I sleep good tonight, I want to make sure that accelerator check ball, that indeed it is in there, and it is right there. So let's do, you wake up at night and have nightmares about that kind of stuff. So we'll put that back in there. We'll get these going. When you read the shop manual, it tells you to tighten down these screws. Everything you see is firmly, to me, that means not too tight and not too loose. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing here. Okay. Get rid of this magnet. Let's see, here we go. Let's get these, tighten this one down a little bit. Tighten down the other side. Let's tight. Now one little last. Don't want to strip them out. Just want to make sure that one's snug and that one is snug. Okay, now what we should see now is when we do this plunger again, we should see some fuel coming out, and that's what we want to. Now I got air in there again. Whoop, there we go, right there. That's exactly what we want to see. They're not blocked. I hope you can see that. I'm going to do it again. Right here, you can see that fuel spraying into there. So that's exactly what we want to see. So now I'm going to get all this fuel out of here. Then we'll come back and finish putting it together. Okay, I got all the fuel as much as I can out of the bowl right now. Next we want to talk about these metering rods, the step-up system right here. Okay, So here is my, not really a dilemma, because I think I've resolved it. If you pull up a diagram of this carburetor, the BBD 2-barrel, it's the 4422 or the 4423S. You'll see in the diagram that there's a gasket that's supposed to go in here. Now, I talked to a retired mechanic and an older guy at church this morning. We were talking about this before class started, and I kind of went over it with him. I told him in the diagram it clearly shows a gasket that goes down in this hole. And he said, nope, there's no gasket in that hole. And then I went back and reviewed the video of when I tore this apart, and I checked. And earlier in the video, you'll see that I shined a light down in there, and I checked it with this probe, and there indeed was not a gasket in there. So I am not going to put a gasket back in there. Okay? So what we're going to do with this metering rod, this step up in the metering rods, here is this. There's a spring. This has to go in here. And well, you know what, we can't do that yet because we got to put our jets in. So let's go ahead and put these jets in, and then I'll show you how all this fits together. These jets have been cleaned and blown out. I can see through them. Everything looks to be in good working order there. So we'll get these in. Now remember too, folks, I have never built, haven't rebuilt a lot of carburetors in my life. I've been turning wrenches for, gosh, I'm 55 years old, probably since I was about 14 years old. I learned on a 53 Chevy, a 235 straight 6, which had a little 1-barrel Carter carburetor on it. I tried rebuilding that thing when I was 14 or 15, and I had fuel blowing out the side port. I had no clue what I was doing. So over the years, I've had the ability, I've had the opportunity to rebuild some carburetors, especially the Ford 2100s and things of that nature, and been pretty successful at it. So we want to get these jets tightened down. I'm going to get this big screwdriver back because I don't have a tool. And I just want to give those, I'm not trying to strip it out. You can kind of feel it. I just want to make sure I give it that last crank. There, it popped. That's good. Okay, so that's good. All right, now back to this step. This is called the step up. It's all kinds of fancy terms in here. I'll show you how this works. All right, so we're going to hang these rods on here. I have cleaned those off, and they're straight. And we're going to slide, as we slide this down into the hole, we've got to make sure that we get these, whoops, I already got it going in the wrong hole. We got to make sure that we get these to where they go down in the jets, right in the hole. I know it's hard for you to see because it's hard for me to see. As soon as I get this, I will move my hands and you'll get a clearer view of what's going on here. I want to make sure I don't force it. Oh, totally missed it. There we go. There we go. Come on now. Come on. There we go. That one's in. And this one's in. Okay. All right. Now, what you can see here is I'm going to tilt this back a little bit so you can kind of see this. This is the spring that's in here. And then these metering rods are going into the jets. And that works like that. Okay. So what I'm going to do, this actually has to be screwed down. And here's the screw. So I'm going to go ahead and do this and get this taken care of. Okay. That screw, once again, we're not going to Godzilla on it, but we are definitely going to make sure that it is snug. And it's still going. There we go. Now it's bottomed out, so I'm just going to give it a little torque. There we go. All right, now you can see these metering rods. It's probably a little difficult to see with the light down in here. As this comes up and down, those metering rods need to be free where they can slide up and down. So that looks good right there. We got that. So the next, I'm gonna get this plunger back in here as well because I'd taken it out. And I did mention earlier too, this is made out of leather. I soaked this in some gasoline, and I found that to make it seat properly, down in there. I just kind of twist it down in there. Once it's in there, then you can hear it making that pumping action, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. Okay. Now we're going to get these floats in. Couple things we want to do here. First of all, let's talk about these floats. If you look at the condition of these floats, this is why I believe this thing's been rebuilt. And I really think that the throttle body was not tight enough, and I think I probably had an intermittent vacuum leak on there. I really think that was an issue, because these look great. And you know, a lot of the new rebuild kits, you'll get these neoprene. These are the way to go. And matter of fact, I'll spend extra money, not much, but a couple extra bucks to get these brass floats. So anyway, there was no fluid. I could shake it, didn't hear any fluid. Everything looks good. You can take these, you can boil these in water to see if they're leaking. There's a lot of different things. You can just submerge them in water, see if they're holding fluid. You can hear it rattle inside. But these are all great. So what we want to do, we're going to seat. You got a fulcrum pin here, and this just very simply goes back down and seats down in there. All that's good. And then you have this retaining pin. Now this looks kind of flimsy, and what it does, it's a compression hold down. It just goes in there, but it's loose. I'm like, wow. But then again, when you look at the air horn, the top of this, you'll see that that presses down on it. When you put this together, there's no way that pin's ever going to come out. So that looked good there. Now we have a new needle. Let's see, this is the old stuff here. There's my new one. So we've got a new needle. It's got the rubber tip on it. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put that in. We've got a new gasket that goes on here, and very simply we're going to screw that in. And you can watch as I screw this in. This is a gravity system. This needle in here with the rubber tip. Okay, and you'll see that as this float is, that needle is now forward down there, because I made the force of the fuel will make that needle come out and let more fuel in. When these floats rise because of the level of the fuel in here, it's going to push that pin back, and you'll see that it does that. It pushes that pin back right down in here, and it cuts off the fuel supply because there's enough in there. So it's constantly metering, right? Okay, we got that. Now, as far as the float height, this is supposed to be 5/16 from the top of the float to the top of this edge of the main body without the gasket. And I can tell you, you know, these kits come with these meters. I don't have the fancy one where I can do it that way, but these always seem to work for me. So we've got an inch, we've got a half an inch, we've got a quarter of an inch, we got an eighth of an inch, a 16th. So 5/16 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right in there. And what I can do, I can actually tip this up and kind of let you see it. But what I'm doing is just checking from the top of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It may be a hair low, but if anything, that would maybe starve it out a little bit, not flood it. But these look to be set pretty good. Once again, it leads me to believe this thing was rebuilt some years ago and then just set. So I'm not going to be adjusting those. And how you adjust the floats is you simply bend the arms and get them where you need them. So okay, so that's the floats. We're there. Now we need to get the plunger. We're going to start putting the air horn back on. We've talked about this plunger several times. We use it in the testing and everything of that nature. But before we put this in, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and just get it lubricated a little bit, because this is leather. You want to make sure when it goes down in there that that's not wrinkled or folded or anything like that, or you're just not going to have any pump there whatsoever. So I'm just going to get a little gas on that. And what you do, you've got the accelerator pump spring, which is right here, and then you've got this cap, and you'll see how that works here in a second. That goes on here like so. So basically it's going to look like this. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to, on the bottom side of the air horn, that goes through this hole, and then you've got to get it hooked back on this lever, and that's exactly what we're going to do. That's exactly what we're going to do. There you go. Now there's no way that you could get that plunger, there's no way that you could get that plunger to go at the angle it needs to go to get it hooked on here while it's in there. So now we have to very carefully, let's stop for a second before we do that. Let's make sure we know that the gasket is in here for the Venturi. We know that we have good fuel coming out of those. We know these screws are tight. We know this screw is tight. We know that the screws holding, the 4 screws holding the throttle body to the main body are tight. So there's absolutely no reason why we can't go ahead and close this up. And looking at all the parts, this is for the air cleaner, and then I've got the screws here for the air horn to be screwed down to the main body. So we're in pretty good shape. So we're going to go ahead, and what I'm doing, you'll see what I'm doing. I'm making sure that this plunger goes in here, and just to double check again, watch these metering rods. They're moving very freely. No problem there with these metering rods. So I'm going to go ahead and get this, kind of slide it and twist it in there. Okay. So now, if I kind of hold this together, I should be able to watch this plunge up and down. I'll put it at an angle pretty freely. And there we go, right there. That's your accelerator pump. Okay. All right. So with that in mind, let's go ahead. Oh, it's the spring. The spring is making it not go together. I'm like, what's going on? So let's go ahead and get a couple screws in here and get this. Oh, you know what we forgot? Oh, wow. We forgot the gasket. Now, I did look at the old gasket. Here's the old gasket, which actually is in pretty doggone good shape. So I'm going to save that as a backup when I'm reviving other vehicles and things of that nature. We have the new gasket, which matches up. Okay. Yeah, it would be a bad day if we didn't have that gasket. And I want to make sure I get this on right. What I don't know is what's the significance of this tab. And why is it there? So I want to look at this real quick. Yeah, there's no marks left. Oh, here we go. Here's a mark. There, see, there's a mark where it was bolted down, and that mark matches right like that. So that flange was actually on this side over here. I don't think it really matters, but I'm going to put it back the way it was. So that would go there. Okay, now we'll get that plunger back down in there. Without folding it. There we go. It's sliding right down in there. Okay, we got our gasket. Get it lined up. I want to make sure we're looking good here. And we're not. See how that's locked up there? So I need to, yep, we need to make sure. I need to put a little more lubrication on that plunger. I want to make sure it goes down in there good. So bear with me 1 second, please. I'll get a little fuel on it. I just dipped it in some fuel, and I want to make sure that I kind of twist. I'm going to kind of twist it in there to make sure. You know what? If I hold this down, it might help a little bit. Well, it's supposed to be a heck of a lot easier than this, but you know how that goes. You know how that goes. Don't like that. Don't like that at all. Okay. Nope, don't like it. All right, let me stop and figure this out. Okay, take 2 on the plunger. All right. First of all, I got the plunger down in there. You want to make sure, let me get the old one again. Just to make sure. You know, this one's a little dried out, but that leather, it can't flip up when it goes down in that hole, or you're not going to get the plunge that you need on the plunger. So anyway, that's in there really good. I can hear the air. So what we're going to do, we're going to put the gasket on, just like we had before. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to put this on, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to do it the hard way to make sure that that plunger is down in there. That's very important. Okay, I've got it apart so that I can kind of finagle this around a little bit. And let's see if I can pull that plunger up. Boy, it's not easy, is it? It never is. That thing's got to come up a lot further. Or maybe if I take it down and do that. Nope, that's not going to work either. So I'm going to have to rethink this again. Okay? Let's give it another whirl. If I pull that plunger up is what I need. Oh, I know what I can do. Let's get this in here. Let me get a pair of needle nose pliers. And I think I can pull that plunger up just enough to allow this. Shouldn't be this hard, you know what I mean? There we go, there we go. You know, it's just all about technique and finesse, right? Don't always need to get a hammer. So let's get everything back in order here as far as the gasket's concerned. That is functioning well. So let's get some screws in here. These are the recessed screws, and those are Phillips. Let's go ahead and try to get one of those started. I've got my gasket lined up, and I don't. So let's do it this way. Let's line the gasket up back here where we can see it. There we go, that's lined up pretty good. We'll start a screw right there. Okay, that screw started. Now we'll go over to the other side where that started. At least get it started. That started. Now we're aligned on the front with the gasket. Looks like it's actually a little over. There we go. Okay, let's get some in here. That started. That started. That started. That started. I've got 2 more screws, but what I want to do real quick, I want to make sure that all of these are hooked up correctly before I tighten this all the way down. In the event I have to take this back off to get these hooked up. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I had to go do some studying on the mechanicals over here on the side. So as you're putting the throttle body into the main body, and as you're putting the air horn section onto the main body, you've got to get your plunger connected. You've also got to get your plunger rod and your fast idle rod, get all of those hooked up and make it look the way it's supposed to look. And how I did that, obviously I took pictures before. Okay, I talked about that. So with all that back together, we've got all the gaskets in, everything's lined up. I'm going to go ahead and I went ahead and put in 2 screws because I had to take this back off. I'm going to go ahead and get these screws seated in. and get this bad boy back together. Okay. Okay. So I'm not going to have you sit here and watch me put screws in. I think I'll go ahead and get them all where they're supposed to go, just so we see where all 8 of these screws go. We'll make sure that one seats. That's good, that's good, and that's good. Okay, one other thing that two things here. Couple things here. Couple things. Okay, we need to talk about the choke real super quick, and we need to talk about this inlet that I didn't tighten down. And I think it was a 9/16. We need to go ahead and tighten that down. I forgot to tighten that down. And we might as well just go ahead and do that. Doesn't have to be super tight. It's got a brand new seal on it. I was leaking a little bit right there, I noticed on the old one. So hopefully that'll clear up that. And the vacuum, the choke diaphragm, everything seems to be working well there. Actually, I can put a little suction on this and it seems to be working well. So we're going to tighten all this up, and it's pretty much done. We've got to do some settings on it, some adjusting, then we'll get it on the car. I'm calling it a night. For you, it'll be a couple seconds. For me, we're calling it a night, and I'll get back in here tomorrow night. We'll get this put back on the car and get it cranked up. It is the next evening for me. It's the next second for you that you're seeing this. Did a little research today. This bowl vent was really bothering me, and I think I've got it figured out. If you remember, I took pictures, and I recommended that y'all take pictures before you tear a carb apart. But you can clearly see that this lever is on top of that flange on that bowl vent right here. Now, I found some instructions, and these are not copyrighted. Yeah, Mike's Carburetors, a little plug for him. I buy parts from him if I need them. But anyway, got a nice diagram. It was just very, very difficult to find information. There's no videos out there that I can find on this type of a 68, a 4423S, or 4422S. There's different versions of the 2-barrel BBDs, but not a lot on the Carter for 1968. But anyway, in the instructions, you can see that it clearly shows that lever is up underneath. It also, down here on the bowl vent for 1968, it shows us that it should be 3/64. Okay, now that's when your curb idle is adjusted and throttle valves in the curb idle are in the curb idle position. So right now, I need to get this installed to check it out and everything. And I think this may have been one of our problems as well, if the bowl wasn't being vented properly. So I've got this thing all together. I've double checked all the screws, especially the throttle body. If you remember, this throttle body, it wasn't loose, but it wasn't tight. And I've really got these secured. I've taken these all the way in. They were originally set at 4. I backed them out 1.5. We're going to start there. The idle mixture screw back here was out 3.5. I took it all the way in and backed it out at 3. Of course, we get it running and warmed up, we'll adjust those. So let's get this thing on. Okay, let's get this bad boy back on. I did also, off camera, I came out and I cleaned up this surface and put this on. And remember, we've got a little rigging going on here. Instead of having the stud here, we've got this bolt. I haven't had time to go get another stud, so we're going to continue to use the bolt, keeping in mind that this whole intake is being replaced anyway with that Y-end 4-barrel intake. So let's get this thing on. Got our gasket, got that. I will be as quick as possible here. Okay, I don't have a C-clamp that big, but I do have one of these little clips, and I think that'll hold it on for now. Keeping in mind that, well, I'll need it for the new 4-barrel anyway, but all right, come on, bugger. All right. I know this will fit. Come on now. I know you'll fit. You know what? I'm working a little too hard on this. There we go. There we go. That'll stay on right there. That won't come off. So, okay, we've got all of our linkage hooked up. I do. Let me move this camera here a little bit. We're gonna move the camera anyway here in a minute when we try to get this thing started. Anyway, everything looks good there, but you notice this isn't moving. I want to keep an eye on this because that should be moving this up just a little bit. To vent some air, but maybe when it gets warmed up. So we got everything hooked up. I'm gonna go and get the battery hooked up. I'll move this camera, and I've got an auxiliary fuel tank hooked up, which goes down to the fuel pump because I have the fuel tank out cleaning it. So, okay, let me get this set up. Okay, I got everything ready. The battery's a little weak, but I think we can make it. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a little carb choke cleaner here down in here to help her out. And get this bad boy running. Got to get it crank enough to get the fuel up into the system, but it cranked right up. That's good news. Let's try it again. See what we got going on here. May have flooded it. Let's see if we've got fuel coming into the bowl here. Can't tell. Can't tell. Let's break this loose a little bit. See if I've got any fuel coming in up here. Well, that's that one. Get a little bigger wrench. First of all, I loosen that up. Don't want that loosened up. Well, there we go. See if I've got fuel up here yet. Yep, I got fuel. Okay, so I got fuel. I think I flooded it, so let's give it a minute. good. Now I'll hold the accelerator down. Let's see if that can do it. I don't have a lot of battery. Yeah, we're squirting fuel in there. I probably got this thing flooded. I'm gonna let it set for a minute, then we'll come back and get it started. Okay, I went ahead and hooked up the battery charger. Let this charge for a while. Went and got something to eat and get that out of the way. We're gonna give this thing another whirl. I'm not gonna touch the accelerator at all. I'm just gonna hit it and see what it does. Pump it. I can sure smell fuel. I can see fuel. No leaks. Vacuum, vacuum. Plunger. Plunger is working okay. No problem there. Okay, that's all good. Don't think it has anything to do with that. Give it another whirl here. Oh, gotta let the battery charge. Okay, we got the battery fully charged up. That was part of the problem. You just gotta have enough cold cranking amps, especially for an old 383, to get this thing cranking over. So got all the adjustments made, tweaked a couple things. I'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to go ahead and kick this thing over and let you hear it. And I want you to also notice that on the carburetor, the choke is where I last had it running right here. So the choke is open. When I start this, choke will close. I've got the idle set probably a little too low, and I've got to make some more adjustments after get this out and run it and get it under load and test it out. But right now it's running fine. All right, 1 second. All right, couple quick things here. First of all, on what I do on carbs, I'm not a carb expert. But this is the kit that I bought. You notice I write down all the information on here so that I have it for future reference. Any unused parts and any old parts, I go ahead and keep, because if you're looking for one of these or one of these and you're on the side of the road, it's going to come in handy. The other thing I really want to promote, it's an investment, but when I buy one of these cars that I'm going to spend some time working on, I go to Rock Auto and buy the service manual. It's a copy. You know, the pictures aren't great, but overall, you get everything on this thing from A to Z. The wiring diagrams are in there, everything. It's pretty great investment. It's been a great help. Really, the only last thing I want to point out, remember this is a 2-barrel BBD. There are very, very limited videos out there that in the YouTube world that talk about this. There's all kinds of 2-barrel BBDs, but when you're talking about this model, the 4422S or the 4423S, very few videos. Make sure you take a bunch of pictures, especially your setup over here and your vacuum setup. This is a well vacuum choke, so it runs off the heat. Later down the road, I'm going to show you the intake here in a second. This intake could be replaced with the Y-end, and I'm still researching the best. It's going to be a Holley, I'm pretty sure. The best Holley to put on here. So anyway, we're done with that. Let me show you this Y-end I got. And let me get it over now. Yep. Get it over here in the light. Why is that? There we go. All right. This gem, like I said, I picked up online on Facebook Marketplace. A little plug to them, out of Pennsylvania. Like I said, I missed out on the high performance exhaust manifolds, but this is definitely a 7501. Done a little research, haven't found a lot on that. And you'll notice this little thing right here, that's factory. I've looked at some other pictures of this, and that's factory. The one thing I don't understand, which I'm researching a little bit, if you know anything about it, just put a message down below and help me out. But you know, this is a dual plane. If it didn't have this in here, it'd be a single plane. So dual plane, it's got this little cutout. Gotta believe that's to do with some crossover flow. So this is the one that's going to be on there. I've done a little bit experimenting. Am I going to shine this up? Am I going to paint it? Haven't decided yet, but we'll get to that. Okay, we're off to work on the Miata. Thank you all for watching. And hey, I'm new at this. If you like what you saw, subscribe, please. Help a brother out. And I will continue to try to improve to give you the best content that I possibly can. Be blessed. Thank you.